So many moms stay silent because of the stigma. You lost your children, you must be a terrible mother. Or she must have done something really bad, lose her kids in family court. They always rule in honor of the mother. Maybe, just maybe, that's a mental game they play. Have all of society judge you, you're gonna stay really silent about what they did to you in there then, won't you? And then forget it. Maybe you're a licensed psychologist like me or licensed in something else. Can't speak out then because you have to stay professional outside of work. Control, control, control. Let's look at these licenses. Everyone's like, do they have this license? Do they have that license? The license is a leash. It's another way for you to be controlled. Because you know what? If you need that license to work, that license is then slavery. Because they control your resources. How do wars win and get lost? You run out of food. So if they control how you get food, how you have shelter, how you can have rest, they control you. Now, I don't know if all of you guys looked at the judicial canons. The judicial canons are their code of ethics. They talk about keeping up appearances. It's literally said that way, at least the California one, in some sketchy way that makes it sound like they know they're a fraud. But they must keep up those appearances because those appearances is what society goes on. So speaking up and speaking out and waking people up to what's going on, your story matters. Break the stigma. It's a couple weeks of discomfort as people judge you and think you're that terrible mom. And then you keep telling the story and then they start hearing other stories because now there's an algorithm. And then the whole world starts to be like, what's going on in family court? You know what? I used to hear rumors about, well, nothing's as bad as family court.
When I had first started out in Child Protective Services as a social worker, my supervisor assigned me a case and she said, this mom is crazy. It had been in the court system, there were lawyers involved, everybody had kind of already decided that mom was the one with the issue, she was crazy. But when I went out to investigate, it became pretty obvious that mom wasn't crazy. She was trying to tell people that dad was abusive and nobody would listen to her. And she was understandably frustrated by that, which everybody in the system interpreted as mom is the one with the issue. Mom is crazy. She's too emotional. She's too this, she's too that. But if you just looked at it and listened to her and did an assessment of the case and were objective and didn't go in with confirmation bias and buy into what everybody else was thinking, it was pretty obvious to see the dynamic. This happens sometimes where somebody has a really strong reaction to the circumstances of their life, and then we blame them for it, which is very frustrating when the circumstances they are responding to have been caused by the professionals in the system, whether it's the police, social workers, therapists, I'm a therapist now, judges, doctors. When professionals make the wrong decisions about families, or they've got the right assessment, but the solution is wrong, people tend to have big feelings about that when they feel like they're not being listened to, when their statements are disregarded, when people are wrong. Yeah, they're going to have some big feelings. And what we should be doing as professionals is taking into account how our behavior impacts the response of the people that we are serving, because we are the servants. As a therapist, I get background history, and I've had people tell me, well, mom has mental health issues. And my response is, well, does mom have mental health issues? Or did a bunch of really stupid decisions get made and she's a little bit mad about it? As professionals, we have to hold ourselves accountable and understand how our actions impact the responses we get from other people. I had a client ask me a question and I was dismissive of it. And she called me on it. Now, I had choices. I could have come back at her and said, don't talk to me like that, or this is your issue, or blamed her for how she was responding to me. But instead, what I did was I said, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. I was dismissive when I shouldn't have been. And I'm sorry I did that. And then we moved on. And that it's okay to do that as a professional. In fact, we should do that.
Abolishing family court is the only answer, and here's why. The Zimbardo prison experiment already proves that people join a corrupt culture in 6 days. It only takes 6 days for power to go to people's heads and for them to start abusing innocent people. The Zimbardo prison experiment was just made of regular college students. So the only difference was the power differential, where some were assigned a prisoner role and others to be a prisoner. And in 6 days, it became so abusive that some prisoners were refusing to eat. They were spitting on prison guards, and the prison guards were literally beating them up and abusing them. As a licensed clinical psychologist, my solution is to have your average psychologist, average therapist in charge of helping families heal, because no family should be put in a war zone when they need healing. And what's different is that when they go to a facilitator of healing, there's no power differential. The playing ground is equal. We empower people to come up with their own wisdom, their own solutions that are in balance and harmony. Even if somebody's a psychopath, like family constellations can go so deep where you heal like the pattern of psychopathy in your family line. Like there's a reason why somebody married somebody with narcissism, borderline, etc., because there's a loyalty, a hidden subconscious loyalty in the family line because of a trauma, right? Narcissism, psychopathy, it evolves out of unhealed trauma.
It is a natural, normal response for any mother to be going crazy without their child in their presence. So if you look at a bear and a cub being taken away, the bear goes psycho, especially if you're withholding the child.
The true effects of parental alienation on a child are almost impossible to measure. What about the things we don't see? Did it lead to an addiction, self-harm, choosing an abusive partner? Did it kill their confidence, their dreams, their ability to believe that anyone could love them unconditionally? And outside of the emotional damage, the birthdays missed, the holidays spent wondering why it all fell apart, entire futures erased because one parent chose control, revenge, or money over their own child's well-being. The alienated child doesn't just lose a parent, they lose everything that parent would have added to their life. Love, support, identity, opportunity. They lose more than anyone will ever realize, and they lose it because of one person's selfish choice. Parental alienation doesn't just break families, it breaks generations.
Turning a child against someone that loves them is not parenting, it's psychological violence. And children deserve laws that protect them from the serious abuse that it is.
The thing that the therapists, judges, courts don't understand is that just because the child doesn't openly express that they're terrified of the alienating, narcissistic, bipolar, cluster B personality parent doesn't mean that the child doesn't live in fear. They're not allowed to express any feelings other than fake happiness around that parent. And of course, they're children, they love their parent. And this is the most counterintuitive part, is children love both their parents. They love their mother and they love their father. Even when children are abused, they still love that parent. But just because they love that parent doesn't mean that they're not afraid of that parent. Doesn't mean that they're not terrified to go back to their house, but they don't have the opportunity to express that. They don't have the opportunity to share that because of the fear of the consequences from that alienating parent. Nobody is looking at the protection and the safety of that child other than the targeted parent who's made out to be the monster and the abuser, and they don't have the opportunity to be with that child and protect them. That's sickening.
Alienating parents will always say it's the child's decision, but real choice doesn't come from pressure or manipulation. It comes from freedom.
Parental alienation is real, and it is a horrible form of psychological abuse that hurts the child's development and will affect them the rest of their life.
Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks, what is parental alienation? And I've also heard the question, what is parental alienation syndrome? And is that a real thing? So this is an interesting topic that comes up fairly frequently when counseling individuals who are going through a divorce, specifically a divorce that involves a custody dispute. Parental alienation is when one parent tries to damage the relationship between the children or a child and the other parent. So the technical definition would be parental alienation refers to either a state of the relationship between a child and a parent whom the child rejects without good cause, or to the child's attitudes, beliefs, thoughts, and behaviors that reflect an unreasonable aversion to the parent with whom he or she formerly enjoyed normal relations. For example, a mother and a father are going through a divorce. The couple has a daughter. So the mother tells the daughter about how bad the father is, trying to make the daughter have a negative view of the father, also trying to get the daughter to sympathize with the mother's position. Ostensibly, the end goal would be for the daughter to tell a judge that she wants to live with the mother and not the father, and potentially to tell the judge that she doesn't want to see the father at all. Generally, parental alienation is divided into 3 levels of severity across 2 dimensions: parental alienating behaviors and the level of severity of the child's parental alienation. So as I illustrate these levels across these 2 dimensions, I'm going to stay with this example of the mother engaging in parental alienating behaviors, just for the sake of clearly identifying to whom I am referring. Of course, it doesn't have to be a mother. It could be either parent who is engaging in these behaviors, and of course, it doesn't have to be a daughter. It could also be a son. So starting with the parental alienating behaviors, again, this is an example of what the mother would do. The first level is mild. This is fairly common, and we see this in a lot of couples who are getting a divorce. The mother might say something critical of the father to the daughter. It's more of an occasional thing, expressing dissatisfaction or anger. The behavior does tend to increase after separation, but if it's at the mild level of severity, the mother will often regret the behavior and make an effort to change it and support the daughter's positive relationship with the father. The next level is moderate. Here we see the communication of negative themes about the father, like the idea that the father had an affair, like the idea that the father doesn't really love the daughter, he only wants custody of the daughter to get back at the mother, the idea that the father is dangerous and violent or a worthless human being, and also this idea that he's being manipulative. With the moderate level, the mother has difficulty recognizing how inappropriate her behavior is. Then we have the severe level. With this level, we see recurring, harsh, unmitigated criticism. The mission here is to destroy the child's relationship with the father. Some examples: the mother who reprimands or punishes the daughter because the daughter asked to spend time with the father, or the daughter didn't express enough negative sentiment to the father, so she wasn't negative enough, or maybe she was a little bit positive, which would be even worse, or the daughter didn't outright refuse to have contact with the father. Parents at this level have an unwavering view of the other parent. They are more likely to violate a court order, like specifically one around parental visitation schedules, and parents at this level often accuse the other parent of numerous bad acts. So how about the levels of severity from the other point of view, the 3 dimensions related to the child who has been exposed to parental alienating behaviors from a parent? At the mild level of parental alienation in the daughter, again, I'm using the daughter here as the example, the daughter may complain a little bit about spending time with the father, may resist the idea, but when she's with the father, her behavior returns to normal. Any negative thoughts, feelings, or behaviors go away. So of course this level of parental alienation isn't ideal, but it's not really the focus of too much attention. There's much more attention related to the moderate and severe levels. Typically the mild level of severity doesn't become worse. It doesn't advance to a higher level of severity. So moving to the moderate level, here the daughter strongly resists contact with the father, to the point where she is withdrawn, antagonistic, contemptuous, and difficult to manage when she's in the presence of the father. Unfortunately, a child at this level is often on a course to end up at the severe parental alienation level. So unlike the mild level, this one does have a progression to it, typically. So moving to the severe level, here we see nothing short of intense fear and hatred toward the father. The daughter refuses to go with the father, or if she does go, she only goes grudgingly. The daughter engages in deliberately defiant and oppositional acts to send a clear message to the father. Like when she's with the father, she has continual contact with the mother through social media posts, talking on the telephone, or text messaging. The daughter may destroy or steal possessions of the father, particularly if those possessions have some sort of sentimental value, or if they're documents related to the divorce proceedings. She may also directly threaten the father with harm or run away, Another symptom we see at this level is entering into a conspiracy with the mother to falsely accuse the father of bad acts. This behavior at the severe level, and even at the other two levels, is often factored in by the court. A judge is less likely to compel a child to spend time with the parent when the child behaves in this manner. Now, some mental health professionals and lawyers believe that claims of parental alienation should never be considered by a court. Most mental health professionals and lawyers don't believe this, but several do, and they have a few reasons. They say that parental alienation cannot be accurately identified, so it's a behavior that can't be easily verified. Someone can make a claim, and there's no way to prove or disprove that. Another reason would be that they believe the parental alienation claim is used by parents who simply want to escape responsibility for their own bad acts. So using that earlier example, the father would claim that the mother is engaging in parental alienating behaviors, even though he was guilty of maltreatment, and that really explains why the daughter is rejecting him. So perhaps he really doesn't want custody of the daughter for any other reason than to get back at the mother. This is referred to as a false positive identification of parental alienation. So the court believes the father when they should not have believed him. It's interesting to me that this movement ever gained any ground, this idea that parental alienation should not be considered by judges. We know from the scientific literature that parental alienating behaviors and the presence of parental alienation in a child can be readily identified. So this idea that we don't know parental alienation when we see it is just not true. Now, it is fair to say that it's not always easy to distinguish normative problematic behavior from parental alienation. And in a moment, I'll review 7 criteria that can be used by mental health professionals to aid in making this distinction. Now, as far as the lying part, the idea that one parent is going to lie about parental alienation, lying is something that mental health professionals and lawyers who are working with divorcing clients need to get used to. It's remarkably common in these situations. Sometimes it's not as much about lying, though, as just different perceptions, as well as emotions getting in the way of reason and clouding people's judgment. Just because sometimes people lie about parental alienation doesn't mean that all claims of parental alienation are untrue. Interestingly, this is the position taken by the professionals that want to prohibit courts from considering evidence of parental alienation. They believe that there are nothing but false positives when it comes to parental alienation, which seems like a really extreme and surprising view for people that in theory would have some understanding of science, human behavior, and the evaluation of evidence. Now, part of the problem here is that in the 1980s, there was this idea of parental alienation syndrome proposed by a man named Dr. Richard Gardner. He really took the theory too far, and it wasn't supported by any scientific evidence. Now, some people equate the idea of this syndrome to just plain parental alienation. The syndrome, of course, is not well supported, but the idea of parental alienation is. So one is a proposed mental disorder that was essentially debunked, and the other is simply a behavior. We know that parental alienation can occur and does occur fairly regularly in these custody disputes. These professionals are denying the reality of manipulation. Another example of the professional community not being aware of the presence and power of narcissism. They seem to be willing to believe that narcissism exists on the side of somebody alleging parental alienation, but they don't believe that if somebody's accused of it, they could be narcissistic or deceptive. Fortunately, this group of professionals is fairly small. The vast majority of mental health professionals and lawyers agree that a parent can manipulate a child into rejecting the other parent when the other parent did not deserve to be rejected or would not have ordinarily been rejected if not for the first parent's interference. So earlier I mentioned 7 criteria that may be used to help make the distinction between negative behavior in a child that's not related to parental alienation and negative behavior that is. This list of criteria, of course, is no substitute for a professional evaluation. Rather, these are considered guidelines to be used by professionals in conjunction with their clinical judgment. These criteria apply only to the moderate and severe levels of parental alienation. So let's take a look at the 7 criteria pointing toward negative behavior that was caused by parental alienation. So number 1 is that the behavior is persistent as opposed to temporary. So there's a chronic nature to it. Number 2, the behavior is frequent rather than occasional. 3, the behavior occurs in most situations rather then only in certain situations. 4, the behavior occurs without displays of love and affection toward the rejected parent, so a lack of balance there. 5, the behavior is directed toward only one parent. I've seen many situations where one parent believes that they're being rejected, and it turns out that both parents are really seeing the same behavior being directed toward them. So both parents are being rejected. Number 6, the behavior is not typical for the child's stage of development. This is always important to keep in mind. What should the child be doing based on where they are developmentally? And number 7, the behavior is disproportionate to and not justified by the rejected parent's past or current behavior. So what if it turns out that the child's behavior was not caused by parental alienation? What else could explain the negative behavior? Well, as it turns out, a lot of different things. Sometimes children are sad and anxious about parental separation. That makes sense. Sometimes they have difficulty adjusting to new situations and stress. They may be reluctant to spend time away from the parent that they believe needs more emotional support. So with that example of the daughter that I used before, the daughter may really identify with the mother and worry about the mother and the mother's emotional well-being. So it makes it look like the daughter doesn't want to spend time with the father when it's really about focusing more attention on the mother's needs. We also see that sometimes the other parent is hanging around with somebody that the child doesn't want to hang around with. For example, the father has a new girlfriend and the daughter doesn't want to spend time with that girlfriend. So it's not about really rejecting the father, it's about rejecting that girlfriend. Sometimes a child is simply closer to one parent than the other, and likely this situation would be a pre-existing situation, right? It would occur before the separation started. A child may feel more comfortable at one parent's home, like all their stuff is there, their own bed, their own TV. They're simply more comfortable with the setup of the room. Or the negative behavior simply could have already been in progress. The child was moving away from one parent and toward the other, perhaps before the separation. It's not unusual as a child grows up that their level of attachment changes with both the parents, and sometimes they move to being more detached. If that happens to correspond with the separation, one or both of the parents may think that the separation is causing that detachment.
One of our viewers recently asked me what to do about parental alienation syndrome. I've got some experience with that, having been a child custody evaluator for the courts. Listen up. For about 13 years of my career, I was a child custody evaluator appointed by the court to go into a divorcing family and figure out how to help these people share their kids. Normally, when I got involved, things had gotten pretty messy. These are families who weren't able to work it out on their own. They didn't come up with any kind of a mediated plan for how to share their kids. They were fighting. And the conflicts would get really nasty sometimes. You can't shock me. Having been through that experience, I've seen all kinds of high conflict, nasty things that happen in families. And parental alienation is one of these things. Now, this is a term that was originally coined by Dr. Richard Gardner years ago, and it's become part of the vocabulary of custody evaluators and judges and attorneys who work in family law. You've probably come across it as well. Basically, what it means is an active campaign that's undertaken by one or both of the parents to alienate them from the other children, to put a wedge in, to poison the waters, so to speak, so that the relationship is damaged between the children and the other parent. There's a lot of reasons why this happens. Psychologically, in a custody case, here's what I've observed. When a divorce happens, the common thinking is, that person, that nasty, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad person that I am divorcing, and there are good reasons why too. I can't have that person in my life anymore. I can't live with that person. I don't want to be around that person, and so on and so on. Now, I'm exaggerating this, or am I? No, in some cases, that was underplayed. But this is the mentality. And with that mentality, think about how important your kids are to you. Right? And this child that I am so responsible for and that I love more than anything on earth, can I allow this child that I love so much to go be with that person that is so terrible that I can't be with them? This is the mentality that causes parental alienation. I can't allow my child to experience that terrible, horrible, no good, very bad person. I wouldn't be a good parent if I allowed my child to be exposed to that. And so that's how parental alienation starts. And sometimes it's even a strategic move to obtain or gain child custody. And that's just foul play, if you ask me. That's not fair. It's not a good way to fight in those cases, but it happens all the time. I've spent this time defining it, describing it, telling you where it comes from. I promise to tell you what to do about it. Knock it off. Don't do it. Don't go there. I know from a professional standpoint that this damages children. And I've seen far too many kids hurt by this. Don't do it. Don't go there. I know you'll be tempted to. Okay, you've got that, right? Because you're approaching this with integrity and character, and you've got your children's best interest at heart. But what about that other parent? The one that's doing all of the alienation? Let's spend the balance of this video talking about what to do if alienation is happening in the other home. What can you do about that? Before I share those tips with you, here's a disclaimer. I am not your attorney. I am not providing to you legal counsel. I guess that's a disclaimer for the video, but also I'm acknowledging you might need it. You might need some legal counsel. I personally believe that the courts are a terrible place to solve family problems. Awful, horrendous. It's set up as an adversarial system, and that's not how families work best. I think it violates all kinds of principles. Having said that, it's the only place we have to resolve child custody issues if you can't come to an agreement with the other parent. So if that's where you are, you're probably going to need some professional assistance. I believe that legal counsel is kind of like dentistry. You don't want to do it yourself. You have a right to, but I haven't seen that work out very well for most people. Get competent legal counsel if you need it, and please be selective because some attorneys are just in it for the fight. And fighting is not the best strategy for happy families. Now I'm talking as a psychologist, okay, not your attorney. What can you do if the alienation dynamic is happening in the other home? Refuse to take the bait. And you probably know what I mean because they're going to be lobbing bait your direction to see if you'll bite on the bait. Sometimes this comes home with the kids. Hey, Dad said that you, whatever, okay? And it just makes your blood boil. Or, well, Mom said that you have. Okay, if you're getting triggered like that, that's the bait. Don't bite on the bait. Defensiveness validates accusation. Write that down somewhere. Defensiveness validates accusation. And it works contrary to what it is you're trying to accomplish. Don't take the bait. Do not return fire. Don't fight against the people who are inviting you to fight. You with me? I like what's called a strategic non-response. And if it's clearly bait being lobbed over your direction, instead of biting on it, you're going to give a strategic non-response. Your own anxieties are going to be tempting you to violate what I just shared with you. The strategic non-response feels like you're giving in, feels like you're giving up, feels like you might even be acknowledging what they're saying is true. I think it's just the opposite. I think what you're really saying is, hey, that doesn't really even justify a response from me. That is so far out in left field, I'm not even going to address that. You see how a strategic non-response might be your best strategy. Here's where it gets tough. When your kids are asking questions, or when your kids bring it up, because sometimes they get to be the messengers of these nasty messages. When your kids are challenging you about something that is clearly bait that's being lobbed over from the other side, I think one of the best things that you can do is take yourself out of the role of trying to explain everything to your kids. Your job is to love them, no matter what and even if. It's not to help them see the truth. It's not to help them understand the flaws in the arguments that they're hearing in the other home. These aren't even the kids' issues for the most part. These are things that the parents need to work out. So, taking that position as you're interacting with your kids and not taking the bait, I think it's okay to listen with empathy and say, wow, well, what do you think about that? See, that's drawing it back out of them. Well, Dad, I don't think that you're a bad guy. Mom, I don't think that you're that evil. See, they're going to have their own perceptions and they're just feeling the waters. If you become defensive, it validates the accusation in their mind. Well, I can't believe that they said that over there. Do you see how that's going to look to your kids? You're just taking the bait and you're joining in the fight. You're returning fire. Don't do it. What do you think about that, honey? What's been your experience with me? Okay? And let it stand on its own 2 feet. That brings me to my last point. One of the best things you can do about parental alienation syndrome doesn't even have anything to do with parental alienation syndrome. Here's the counsel that I've given hundreds of families in this situation. I'm going to give it to you as well. You create the most stable, sane, loving, warm, open, communicative environment that you possibly can in your own home. Don't get distracted by everything that's going on in that other place that you wish would change, or that's driving you nuts, or that you feel baited into responding all of the time. Let that be what it is. Bring your focus back home. This is the place where you have more control. Right here in your home, establish that sane, loving, stable environment for your children. When they reach a level of emotional maturity, and sometimes this comes years later, okay, but they will see through it. And I've seen so many examples of parental alienation syndrome backfiring on the person who is using it as a strategy. It backfires on them at some point because kids love both of their parents. You want to create an environment where they are free to do so, and they have full permission from you to love both of their parents. This is not easy to do. I'm asking you to do a very hard thing here because you'll be pulled and baited into the fight. Don't accept the invitation. Hold your ground. Create that stable, sane, loving environment at home. Remember, your job is to love your kids no matter what and even if. Don't try to explain all of this to them. It's not their issue anyway. But bring it home to where you can have the biggest impact. That's where we can really make a difference.
Mr. Speaker, I know this pain firsthand. I grew up around the system. I've seen its cracks. I've seen its blind spots, and I've seen its devastating consequences. And today, my own siblings remain caught in the very system that once failed me. Mr. Speaker, the scars of a broken childhood never fade. Children in our care do not need sympathy. They need action. The damage is already done, but we still have time. Time to rewrite the future for every child who still hopes for safety, for love, and for a home.
Most people don't think about family courts as being unjust and being destructive, that there's a difference as far as in criminal courts versus family courts. Number one, you get due process, right? You don't have due process in a family court. It just doesn't exist. You have constitutional protections. You don't have constitutional protections in a family court. And you know, you can always appeal something. I guess maybe you can appeal it with a family court, but the reality is that when you appeal something, they're going to say, well, we can't overrule the judge's discretion. It's a shame because I want to believe in the court system. I'm a person who wants to believe in the rule of law. I'm a person who wants to believe that justice is going to be done. But I can't do it because I've seen it with my own eyes repeatedly.
And children are traumatized, with a dual trauma. Trauma number one is my parents aren't together anymore. They're confused. They don't know how to articulate that confusion, and it bottles up. But the second trauma is even worse. That's when they're relegated to a visitor to one parent and they don't understand why. They question, am I wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Did they not want to be my parent? Or they question, is there something wrong with that parent? Why is one parent the superior parent and one's the inferior parent? Why does one parent have to ask for extra permission for extra time? Why does one parent have to beg to be a phone call? And imagine that dynamic when that child becomes a teenager and gets in those years where they need extra discipline. If they've been conditioned all their life that that parent is the inferior parent, it's very hard for that child to be able to look at that parent and respect them from a disciplinary role.
Later this year, state lawmakers will study the role of volunteers in the child welfare system. CASAs, or court-appointed special advocates, are supposed to be a voice for children who are victims of abuse and neglect. I-Team's Kara Kenny has been digging into our state's child welfare system, and she explains why lawmakers are looking into this.
Indiana has more than 2,600 volunteers advocating for children in the child welfare system. They're called court-appointed special advocates. And this summer, lawmakers will meet here at the State House to talk about what's working and what's not.
My concern is their power.
Shelby Wass served as a foster parent to a little boy from the time he was 2 to nearly 6 years old.
3.5 years, we are feeling, where is the permanency for this child? He was having a really hard time.
Shelby says she had a bad experience with the CASA on their case. In Marion County, it's contracted out to Kids Voice.
They would frame things as the best interest of the child when, and from my point of view, being with the child 24/7, that was actually the very last thing on their list.
She says she tried to file a complaint with Kids Voice.
They took the call, but it didn't go anywhere further. They had no process. They had no, it was just like, oh, well, this GAL's been here a while and, she knows what she's doing, basically was the response.
87 counties have their own CASA programs. In fact, some counties call them Guardian Ad Litem, or GALs.
And I don't think that most people have a real strong understanding of what CASAs do. A lot of people think they're the same as DCS, so there's a lot of confusion there. And sometimes even foster parents don't totally know what that role is.
Linda Polovic served as a CASA in several counties, and she quit because she felt the judges and DCS did not value her opinion. Her role was to get to know the child and advocate for them. But Linda says she hit a lot of roadblocks.
A lot of the service providers that did the supervising the visits or the therapy for the kids, they would not give me information. They would tell me I had to go through DCS, and that's not the way it's supposed to work, but it was just a constant battle.
Shelby's foster son was removed from her home and eventually adopted by another family. She hopes lawmakers will develop a process for filing a complaint.
I think it would be that accountability process, checks and balances, people being held accountable for their actions.
can't believe it. She was a good mom.
Stop! She kidnapped you. She stole you from me, from your family. She is a horrible human being. When you came back, you treated me like I was the monster. But I let it slide because at least I had you back, and that was enough. But now we found out that she was such a bad mom that she lost custody of her child, and then she took mine. And you're looking for a way to forgive her?
You think you're so great? Like you have no part in this at all? But I heard you that day. My 7th birthday. You said you didn't want me anymore. That you wanted to move on.
That was a lie. I never felt that way, ever. I told her, I remember this. I told her that people would try to get me to forget you and move on, and I said that I never would. Don't you realize that she is manipulating you? She's lying to you so that you hate me. I can read you. I can see it on your face. You're still trying to justify it, even after everything that you know. All this forgiveness that you're trying to find for her. Why can't you have any of it for me? Parental alienation.
Alienating parent creates the flying monkeys with their lies. They lie about absolutely everything. Even in my stories and in my podcast, I have people messaging me about my guest. Oh, he or she is a liar. Did you know that he or she did that? It always ends up being somebody that's aligned with the alienating parent. I don't fight them. I don't ask them how they come to that conclusion. I know that what they do is they build trust in others by creating horrific lies about the targeted parent. Lies that other people don't stop to question or ask, could that be true? They see one negative thing themselves about the targeted parent because we're all human, and they take what the alienating parent says as the gospel and truth, and then they continue to spread horrific lies about that person as well. The alienating parent uses the court order or the parenting plan to reject the targeted parent's time with the child. A strategy that they do and use all the time is they tell the child, well, I would love for you to go spend time with the other parent, but unfortunately that's not in the parenting plan or that's not in the court order. What that does is it teaches the child that anytime the targeted parent wants to do something with them or wants to deviate from the parenting plan, the child themselves starts to say, well, that's not in the parenting plan, or I'll have to check with my other parent to see if that's in the court order. They become reliant on that, and they use that as a tool to not give the targeted parent any flexibility or they're actually allocated time with the child. They use this one-sided document, which, by the way, they ignore every chance they get, but they use it in their favor when they don't want to give the targeted parent any flexibility or additional time with the child.
When a parent withholds a child from another parent, this isn't just co-parenting drama. It's manipulation, and it robs a child of stability. And it poisons their view of love and family, and it plants seeds of confusion, guilt, and then self-blame. Your child is not a weapon or leverage. They should not be a pawn for revenge. So when you block a child from their mother or their father or their grandparents out of anger, you're teaching them that love is conditional, that relationships are disposable, and that their identity is something to be split in two. The damage shows up years later. Unless there's like real danger, cutting a parent out of a child's life is cutting the child in half. Like, a child deserves to have both parents who help shape their identity and show them love. When you withhold a child, you might feel like you've won, but the child is the one who loses every single time.
One parent turned their child against the other parent. It sometimes happens after the couple separates and the legal battle over custody of the child gets nasty. It's a serious problem and can have a horrible psychological effect on the child involved. It's also hard to recognise. But it is real, and it's called parental alienation. It happened to Emma, who's now 14. Emma's not her real name. She lived with her siblings at her dad's. She says he lied to her about why her mother didn't turn up for access visits. Over time, she began to believe her mother simply didn't care about her anymore. Her words are spoken for her.
It's the impact on the child that can be the most damaging. 14-year-old Emma was 7 when her parents divorced. Over the next 2 years, she was severely alienated from her mother by her father.
My brother went away from home to my dad's because my dad was saying he could give them everything he wanted and he wouldn't get in trouble for anything. And when he went away, me, my brother and my sister would never been separated, so it was if my brother's going, I want to go, because we were siblings and siblings stick together. So I went and my sister followed.
For a time, the kids had contact with their mum, but that was soon stopped.
He'd ring up and say, oh, the kids are busy, we're going to do something, they can't see their mum today. And my mum would be already halfway there, and she'd get the phone call to say that we're busy and that we can't see her.
Did you know that at the time?
No. At the time, all we knew was that my mum had let us down, and that she'd been out drinking on the night before, and that she had a hangover, so she couldn't be bothered to come. And it was just what we were lied to.
When your dad would say things to you like, oh, your mum's got a hangover, she's not coming today, what did you think?
I thought that my mum was never like that my mum would never drink loads, she's not that type of person, but if that's what my dad's saying, I believe him, that she's a liar, that everything that's happened is her fault, that she doesn't love us, that she's being a bully towards him and us, and that's why we've behaved the way we have.
In other countries, governments have brought in legislation to try to stop parental alienation, and there are calls for it to be recognised here legally. Let's talk now to Anthony Douglas, who is the CEO of CAFCAS. That's the organisation that represents children in the family courts. Joanna Abrahams is here, a family lawyer who specialises in parental alienation cases. And the Liberal Democrat MP Greg Mulholland is here too. He thinks further research is needed into this. Welcome all of you. Why isn't it recognised in the legal system, Anthony Douglas?
We do recognise parental alienation and alienating behaviours. They're very common in particularly intractable high conflict cases, and each day family court professionals are assessing the impact of alienating behaviours on children.
It's not recognised formally in the sense that if a parent is deemed to be guilty of it, they would be punished, as in other countries.
We have some of the same characteristics, say, as Brazil, because in this country we do, as a final measure, remove children from one parent who has been doing the alienating to live with another. But that has to be done after very careful assessment, because if you're living in an alienating environment, it's like living in a cult, and that belief system is so powerful, if you remove a child from it, though the merits are with the other parent, it can be equally damaging for children. So to criminalise parental alienation is normally not as good as working intensively with a family early to try to help them go beyond pure unfiltered emotion to a space in which there's some reason and some understanding of the impact of the alienation on children. But you're right, we don't have a specific legal provision, but I think your programme is a good illustration that a number of us across the system could usefully get together perhaps to introduce stronger guidance, because the knowledge about these cases is much stronger than it was 5 years ago, particularly the impact on children.
It's, I mean, it's for most parents, you would think, why would you turn a child against the other partner from whom you've separated? Why do people do it? Both mums and dads are capable of this.
That's right, it's both mums and dads. Sometimes it's not always done consciously.
there could be a lot going on, and obviously we don't know about it. And there are frequently subconscious messages going out to the child, and the child will naturally pick up on them.
Like what, for example?
The fact that mum is unable to give emotional permission to the child to have contact with dad, and becomes highly anxious before the child goes, and the child will pick up on that, and then is unsettled, certainly if he is seeing dad to start with. It takes a lot of time and reassurance to the child, it's okay, you can go and see your father, and sometimes people need help with that.
Do you think the problem is a lot more than officially recognised?
I think it's starting to become more and more recognised. We've certainly got the moniker now of parental alienation, which we didn't have about 5 years ago. And more experts are being brought in to diagnose it. So what we often ask for when we go to court is for a psychologist to become involved. They can make the diagnosis. They can assist us with a plan for targeted therapy, and then
For the child?
For the parents, actually.
Okay, that's interesting.
Quite often for the parents, because the children can become over-medicalised. They see lots of experts, and it can be too much for them. And then the parents can address whether there are problems with mum or with dad. It's not necessarily a recrimination or a blame culture. It's really looking, it has to be child-centric. What's in the best interest of the child, and how we can promote contact, assuming, of course, it's in that child's best interest.
Sure. Greg Mulholland, what do you think about the current legislation in the UK and whether it protects enough victims of alienation?
Well, I think it's important to use that word victim, and the victims are the children as well as the parent who suffered from the alienation. It is something, of course, sadly, that happens in many cases, and MPs up and down the country get cases of separation gone very badly, and this is one of the things in there. You say, why do people do it? I'm afraid people can lose a lot of sense of rationality and reasonableness in the face of an unpleasant and messy divorce, and that's very sad. Where I do think there is a problem is that where there clearly is evidence of parental alienation, I don't think that is taken seriously by CAFCAS and by the family courts, to the extent that people even making entirely false allegations of sexual abuse by a parent are not punished. There is no sanction whatsoever in cases like this.
All right, well, let Anthony Douglas respond to that.
We have a duty to investigate every allegation, clearly, because some have proven true. Equally, we can't say just because a child has been brainwashed by one parent against another that that child is not, doesn't have complex feelings and complex wishes and needs. And so to get to the bottom of each case and to understand the complexity of it does take a little bit of time, and that's our bread and butter. We do need to have a stronger culture of urgency, because the longer a child is kept apart from one parent, the harder it is to re-establish a relationship, as I think your film showed. To try to do that in any relationship 6 or 7 years on is nigh on impossible. The bond has gone.
Sorry,
you are entirely ducking the point, Anthony, as well you know, and that's disingenuous. You know full well that where there have been clearly false allegations of sexual abuse against one parent, CAFCAS does nothing, and that is not acceptable. You've just completely ignored that point. That's not an acceptable thing to do.
Well, it's not true, because we have, once that is established, that the allegations are false, we will often then recommend that, as I say, in the final analysis, it may be right for the child to move to the other parent.
That's not the same as taking action, Anthony. That's not the same as taking action, as well you know.
Well, I think
can I step in here, because CAFCAS can make recommendations, but it's up to the judiciary to consider them and decide how they need to be implemented, if at all.
A false allegation made in any other circumstance would be, or could be, regarded as a criminal offence. In this case, CAFCAS do nothing about it. They may sometimes recommend a different custody arrangement, a different care arrangement, but they knew nothing about false allegations, and that is a problem.
I think, Greg, you're oversimplifying the nature of these allegations.
That's absolutely factual, Anthony, as well you know.
Let Mr. Douglas respond.
The nature of these allegations, there are few clear, hard facts in family cases. They're often ambiguous. They're often different people's words, one against the other, with a child caught in the middle. And to produce a rounded analysis that is safe for that child does take a little bit of time, and you can't oversimplify it into punish one parent, because generally the punishment of a parent rebounds on a child who will feel part responsible for it.
All right, thank you very much, all of you. Thanks for coming on the programme. Thank you for your time. Worth saying that a lot of people getting in touch with us are dads saying that it's mostly mums who do this, who are guilty of parental alienation, but it is, as we said earlier, possible for both mums and dads to do this.
Sometimes a younger child is truly convinced that because they're young and they don't have a lot of years of experience maybe with both parents, or they don't have the cognitive ability to say, what you're saying about my parent really doesn't match that parent's behavior, right? They don't have the critical thinking skills to work that out. But an older teenager who's had, 10, 12, 14 years with a parent knows what they're saying, and knows that one parent's trying to convince them. On some level, they know that. And so I think that there's a different level of guilt and shame for that older teenager, maybe, or even a middle-aged teenager, for participating in that. Yeah. And I do see, I've been doing this long enough that I've talked to some older young adults who have figured things out or tried to reconnect with a parent, and the damage, they say, shows up in all their relationships. Not just trying to reconnect with the parent that they rejected, but also maintaining healthy relationships with friends, being able to be successful in their first year of college. I can't tell you how many older teens that the litigation is happening maybe from 16 to 18. So let's say I'm a guardian and I've watched them go through 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, or 11th and 12th grade, and they're going to try and go off to college. And the majority of them can't make it through their first year of college. They just do not have the skills, because a lot of their development has just been shut down because of some of this is in Jennifer Harman's work, where she talks about, the first thing you do is you disconnect from yourself. If you're going to reject a parent at that age, when you kind of know the difference between what your parent's saying and how the parent actually acted, if you're going to reject a parent, you're going to override your own critical thinking skills, right? You're going to give up your own sense of self, your own sense of reality, and you're going to take on the reality of your favored parent. That's going to become your reality. And in that way, you give up a piece of yourself. You give up your identity formation, which is one of the biggest developmental things we're trying to do in adolescence, right? Figure out who we are. We believe different things from our parents just to sort of try things out. We do all of that, push limits. We do all of those things to figure out what's our value system. And these teenagers don't do that. And so they end up going to college really having missed out on 2 years of development. Legal professionals, with a lawyer saying even 3 months is a long time, right? Even if it's been a couple of weeks or 4 weeks, a month, I'm usually saying you need to stop this right now. There needs to be contact. Yes, we can try family therapy, but trying family therapy and not having contact is not the answer. Or if you're going to try family therapy, give it 4 weeks. If people have not made a session every week and contact hasn't started in some way to show some progress, then it's not going to work. Maybe it will work. I mean, I don't know that I could say that for every single case, but in the majority of cases, that contact is the most important piece. I mean, that is one thing that we know clearly from the research, is that one of the things that can help us, one of the easiest things to do, is increase time for the rejected parent. The research shows that just increasing time will help the majority of the cases. So letting that time lag is so detrimental. But it's very hard to get lawyers to, in their mind, they're thinking, well, okay, but that means if they don't agree, I've got to file for a hearing and we've got to go to court. And I'm like, yes, you do.
Is parental alienation or parental alienating behaviors abuse?
Yes.
Is it, okay, very certain about that. Would you say it's child abuse or domestic abuse to the other parent?
Both.
What is a flying monkey? A flying monkey is during a contentious custody battle. So this isn't every single custody case, but some of the highly toxic ones, which could be as many as 10 to 15% of custody cases, where a spouse is more interested in getting revenge on their ex than they are interested in loving their own child. And so they will manipulate people around them to do the dirty work for them so they can give plausible deniability by saying, well, I never spoke badly about the other parent in front of my child. I always speak well of that parent. Well, yeah, but what they don't tell you is behind the scenes, they're manipulating aunts, uncles, neighbors, friends, coworkers, people at school to do the dirty work for them. Where those people are talking bad to the child about that child's other parent. That's what a flying monkey is, and it can cause severe damage to the child.
Parents are starting to realize that you don't have to do anything to lose your children. You don't have to be abusive. You don't have to neglect your kids. You don't even have to make a mistake, but as a parent, we all do. In family court, all it takes is a bitter ex with an agenda, a made-up story that just sounds believable enough, a court-appointed GAL who made up their mind before ever meeting you, or better yet, one who isn't even trauma-informed, and a judge who isn't really interested in the full picture. You can have all the proof in the world and that you're the safe parent, and it still won't matter. Meanwhile, the other parent can bring zero evidence, make wild accusations, and walk out with custody. Because truth isn't what moves the system, conflict does. They don't need facts. They don't need truth. Just a child they can scare, manipulate, or pressure into silence, or worse, into saying things that aren't true. Because here's the heartbreaking reality. Kids often know the truth, but they also know that telling it could mean being torn away from the only home they know. So they stay quiet, or they lie just to have that sense of safety. The family court doesn't want peace. It wants drama, chaos, never-ending legal fees. It rewards abusers and drains the protective parent until there's nothing left to fight with. You don't have to do anything wrong to lose your kids. You just have to be up against someone who knows how to play the game. Continue to be safe parent strong.
Did you know that according to a study that was published in the Journal of Family Violence, parents who alienate their children, the ones that are blocking contact and claiming they're doing so to protect their child, they are almost twice as likely to be the actual abuser.
Some parents protect their child from real danger. The gatekeeper parent protects their control and calls it safety. Gatekeeping starts subtly, small criticisms of the other parent, quiet monitoring of the child's reactions, suggestions that the child doesn't feel comfortable over there. It sounds like concern. It looks like caution. But underneath is a pattern of limiting access, controlling information, and shaping the child's loyalty. Gatekeepers frame the other parent as less capable, less informed, less sensitive, even when that isn't true. They micromanage phone calls. They correct how the other parent speaks to the child. They insist the child is too tired, too sick, or too anxious to go. They ask leading questions designed to produce negative answers. Did daddy yell at you? Were you scared when mommy picked you up late? In one case, a mother repeatedly claimed her son was terrified to visit the father, but the therapist noticed something strange. The child was anxious only in her presence. Once alone with the evaluator, he said, "Mommy gets sad when I say I had fun at Dad's." That's gatekeeping. The child learns they must mirror the parent's narrative to keep the peace. It's different from the passive, aggressive parent who sabotages quietly, and different from the paranoid parent who truly believes danger is everywhere. The gatekeeper parent controls access out of insecurity, jealousy, unresolved resentment, identity tied to being the primary or better parent, fear of losing relevance. Gatekeeping becomes a serious issue when the parent withholds information, interferes with communication, blocks contact, restricts decision-making, undermines the child's bond with the other parent. Children caught in this dynamic often develop loyalty conflicts. They feel pressured to choose sides, hide positive experiences, and protect the controlling parent's emotions. This creates anxiety, guilt, and long-term relational issues. Evaluators look for patterns: the child's behavior in each home, contradictory statements, sudden fear narratives that don't match observed reality, and the gatekeeping parent's tendency to override boundaries for the child's sake. The best response is steady, neutral persistence. Document every withheld communication. Request parallel parenting if the behavior escalates. Let third-party professionals observe the child without parental influence. Focus your case on the child's functioning, not the parent's accusations. Because in family court, protection should keep a child safe, not keep a child from the other parent.
The true effects of parental alienation on a child are almost impossible to measure. We know some obvious ones, things like depression, anxiety, trust issues, relationship problems. But what about the things we don't see? Did it lead to an addiction, self-harm, choosing an abusive partner? Did it kill their confidence, their dreams, their ability to believe that anyone could love them unconditionally? And outside of the emotional damage, there's the loss of support. The parent who would have helped them buy their first car, the one who would have guided them through a career choice or connected them with someone who could have changed their life. The birthdays missed, the holidays spent wondering why it all fell apart. Then there's the financial side. What would have been their inheritance?